Hi there, smart drivers. Defensive driving, smarter defensive driving. Put in place strategy, skills, and information that will significantly reduce your chances of being involved in an accident. That's what we're talking about. The smarter defensive driving defines the problem that you face as a driver. Social driving, the problems you face every day. People speeding, following too close, tailgating, right? And we talked about some traffic statistics here in the United States of America per 100,000 people. The United States of America is 300% higher than what the traffic deaths are in Australia, and it's 400% than what it is in Germany. Even though Germany has the Autobahn, it's still really high in the United States of America. So smarter defensive driving and the tools to keep yourself safe in the smarter defensive driving model are space management, speed management, observation, and communication. Put those 4 tools in your toolbox to keep yourself safe. The basic conflict in traffic, there's always a fundamental basic conflict. The basic conflict is crashes versus congestion. And essentially what we're talking about, on the one hand, we're talking about traffic safety, we're talking about engineering, education, and enforcement, we're talking about keeping people safe. But on the other hand, we're talking about congestion. We're talking about traffic flow. How fast can we travel? How many vehicles can we move along a section of roadway per hour? But those two things are at odds, and we can see that right now in terms of reducing speed limits within cities in the United States of America to reduce pedestrian fatalities. And you can see that in the boroughs of New York City, where they're reducing traffic speed limits to 25 miles an hour. And most other US cities are now following suit in terms of reducing their speed limits within the cities. The challenge with implementing traffic safety is that most drivers will crash 2 to 3 times in their lifetime. They will crash once every 15 to 17 years. So they will go along for a long period of time doing what they have been doing, believing that what they're doing is safe because they're not crashing, but what they're doing may cause a crash in 12 years, 15 years, even 16 years, and there's a culmination of events that come together that cause the crash that they never thought about before because they've never taken any professional training or upgrading to their skills as a driver. What is defensive driving? Defensive driving is putting in place strategies and skills that will compensate for when you make mistakes and when other people make mistakes. Because when we're driving, we always make mistakes. And as well, we want to create conditions that most of the time we can respond accordingly to what's going on in the driving environment. And we do that by creating space in front of our vehicle. You can always control the space in front of your vehicle. Space buys you time, time buys you options, options prevent crashes. Social driving, I've talked about this. This is the problem that you face every day when you're out on the roadways. What is social driving? Social driving is people following too close, stopping too close in a queue of traffic, not stopping completely at stop-signed intersections, speeding, which is seen again and again and again in every reason for traffic crashes. Speeding will be listed as number 1, but it is not that simple. Okay? It's the mismanagement of speed and space. The reasons for crashes are failing to yield, following too close, and the mismanagement of speed and space. All right? And the number 1 crash in North America, as you've heard me say before, again and again, is rear end crashes. Even more so than reported windshield damage to insurance companies. So that tells you how bad it is. Drivers, for the most part, are emotional. They're reactionary, they're retaliatory. If one driver is driving in front and the other driver is driving behind and the driver behind feels that the person in front is going too slow, they will tailgate them to tell them that they're going too slow. And then the person in front is being tailgated, then they'll slow down even more to retaliate against the person behind them. And it's this whole cat and mouse thing going on there. And it's a dangerous situation. We police other people on the roadways. If people are going slow in front of me, I'm going, what are you doing? Come on, at least do the posted speed limit. Okay, hurry up and go. You're in my way. That is the foundational characteristic of social driving. Get-there-itis. And it's not just driving. That get-there-itis is that we got to hurry up and get to our destination as quickly as possible. Airline pilots, ship captains, train engineers, we're all the same. We have to get to our destination as quickly as possible. Driving is a social activity. We have to get along with other people. And how do we do that? What are the tools that we can put in our toolbox when we're driving to keep ourselves safe. I got ahead of myself. The causes of crashes are following too close, failing to yield, failing to give up the right of way, and the mismanagement of speed and space. And keep in mind, when you're driving, you can be right or you can be dead right. Space management, minimum safe distance between your vehicle and other vehicles in the roadway. And the number one place that you can always control space is in front of your vehicle. You always have that 2 to 3 second following distance. Stopping one vehicle length back from the car in front of you when you're stopped in traffic, that is defensive posturing against being rear-ended. And your landmark for that is being able to see the tires of the vehicle in front of you making clear contact with the roadway. And minimum safe distance from pedestrians, cyclists, and other vulnerable road users. 3 feet, 1 meter from vulnerable road users on the roadway, because if you're not near anything, it's less likely that you're going to hit something, okay? Turning, lane changes and roundabouts. When you're turning on multi-lane roads, turn right lane to right lane, left lane to left lane. And you could just go down to a big intersection that has multi-lane roads and you watch the traffic. Half of the people turning on a multi-lane road will turn right and they will drift over into the left-hand lane. Without signaling, they'll just turn and drift at the same time. Changing lanes and turning are 2 separate maneuvers, and you want to do one and then do the other one. Okay? Drive in the spaces between the other vehicles when you're turning or going around curves or going through a roundabout. Don't drive beside other vehicles, all right? Watch the video this week with a tractor trailer turning right, 2 right turning lanes. The truck driver moved right out into the 3rd lane of the left turning lane of oncoming traffic and then turned right beside 2 cars. Well, the lead car on his blind side decided that they were going to change lanes in front of the truck and ran into him. Had the truck driver just slowed down a little bit and pulled in behind the cars, there wouldn't have been a crash. The driver would have prevented the crash. So when you're turning, going around curves and corners, don't turn in beside other vehicles. Turn in the spaces in front or behind those vehicles, all right? Semi-trucks. If there's semi-trucks in the roundabout, stay behind them or get in front of them. Same thing when merging out onto a highway, freeway, or an interstate. If there's a semi-truck in that right-hand lane and you're in the merge lane, just plan to get in behind the semi-truck. Once you get in behind it and you get situated out on the freeway, then move over into the other lane. And keep in mind, traffic laws no more prevent crashes than criminal law prevents crime. It's there to keep us safe, but it's not something that you need to rely on to prevent a crash when you're driving. Speed management. You need to understand the different speeds of different road user groups. Cyclists, for example, are doing 15 to 20 miles an hour, whereas you're doing 30 miles an hour. So there's a 10 mile an hour speed differential. Pedestrians, 6 miles an hour. You're doing 30 miles an hour. Therefore, there's a 24 mile an hour speed differential. If you can understand the general speeds of different road user groups, this is going to help you out in terms of managing space in front and around your vehicle and keep yourself safe on the roadway. Speed controls space, okay? You control the accelerator to have space and have minimum safe distance between your vehicle and other vehicles on the roadway. The throttle, the accelerator controls space around your vehicle, not the brake. If you're on the brake all the time, when you're driving straight forward to control space between your vehicle and the vehicle in front, you're too close. Increase your following distance. Different road user groups that you're dealing with and sharing road space with. Pedestrians, scooters and skaters, cyclists, motorcycles and snowmobile riders, depending on the season. Road users are going to change depending on the season. Cars and light trucks, buses, semi-trucks, trams, trains, and trolleys, depending on where you are in the world. If you're driving in Melbourne, Australia, they have trolleys. Trams, rather. If you're driving in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, they too have trams, okay? San Francisco has trams. Different places have different road user groups, okay? And then there's fixed objects. You're also sharing the roadway with fixed objects. Traffic islands that have signs, roadways, utility poles, bridge abutments, all kinds of instructions. And now we have the traffic engineers, the We Hate Cars world, where they're putting in traffic calming devices in residential areas, which is just something else for you to avoid while you're driving. Traffic signs are to driving what instructions are to an IKEA cabinet. Only when things go wrong do you start looking at the traffic signs and reading them. Observation, having a forward scanning pattern in place. Far down the road, in instrument panel, far down the road, center mirror, far down the road, your side mirrors. Okay, shoulder checking, shoulder checking, shoulder checking. And again, I have to write another article about the importance of shoulder checking. Blind areas around our cars and vehicles are not static. They don't stay the same, okay? They're changing depending on where our vehicle is pointed, what hazards and obstructions are along the roadway, and it is important, as Patty was saying, that you need to adjust your mirrors so that you're moving your head, you're looking and you're observing when you're driving to keep yourself safe. Reversing, use all your tools. How many people now, unfortunately, technology, backup cameras. People are backing up, they're looking in their backup camera. They're not observing, they're not checking the blind areas on both sides of their vehicles when they're reversing. Look for traffic signs. Traffic signs will give you information about where the road is going and where hazards and obstructions are. And the one sign that is the most prolific sign along our roadways is the hazard obstruction signs, and Corey will put up the video about that. Have a look at that for more information. Intersections, mapping intersections, tracking road users. Why? More than 40% of crashes happen at intersections, and it is the place where you are most likely to encounter vulnerable road users. So as you're approaching the intersection, what kind of intersection is it? Are there left turning lanes, right turning lanes? Where are the utility poles, the traffic signs? Where are the vulnerable road users, the cyclists, the pedestrians, and whatnot? Identify and locate intersections to keep yourself safe. MIT, not just a university in Boston, Massachusetts, okay? Mapping intersections, tracking road users. Driving environments. What are the different driving environments that you find yourself in, and what are the challenges you face in every one of these different driving environments? Residential, suburban, school areas, parks and green spaces, industrial, multi-lane cities, freeways, interstates, and motorways. Different skill sets, different observation abilities that you need to have in place. Parking lots. The number of smart drivers that come back to me over the years and say, you don't need to signal in a parking lot. Actually, a parking lot is probably the place that you most need to signal, because keep in mind, turn signals are not to tell other people that you're turning. Turn signals are to get the attention of other road users on the roadway so that they can help you out, because driving is a social activity. And you want to get the attention of other drivers so that they can take evasive action, because sometimes when we're driving, we make mistakes. 3 flashes on the signal, minimum, when you're changing directions of the vehicle. The first flash to get the attention of other drivers, the second flash for them to locate you, and the third flash for them to do something that helps you out. Either slow down, speed up, get out of your way, and whatnot. So it is even more important to signal in parking lots than it is anywhere else. Mapping and tracking intersections, looking farther down the road. Don't be looking at the end of your hood while you're driving in a forward motion. Identifying road users and mapping their movement. And what impact is that going to have on vehicles around you? For example, you're driving along following another car, and the car in front of you is going to turn right, but there's a pedestrian on the sidewalk. That car has to come to a stop now to wait for the pedestrian. If you're not paying attention and don't identify the pedestrian on the sidewalk, you're thinking that that car is just going to turn and go around the corner into the service or shop that they're turning into. But now they're coming to a stop. You didn't maintain the minimum safe distance in front of your vehicle, and now unfortunately you've rear-ended that vehicle in front. Okay? Are the chances, always be thinking, always be mapping and tracking, are other road users going to cross my path of travel? Obstacles in front on left turns, and same thing for tractor trailer drivers when they're turning their vehicle. You want to keep obstacles and hazards in front of your vehicle and to the sight side, which is the driver's side of the vehicle. Left-hand turns. There's 2 schools of thinking in terms of left-hand turns. The first school of thinking is driving into the intersection as deep as you can. I don't teach that. It's not safe, because if you're not in the intersection, if something happens, you're not going to be in a car crash. I advocate waiting at the edge of the intersection. Your landmark for that, front steer tires on the front crosswalk line. When your gap presents itself on the other side of the intersection, the car in front of the gap on the other side of the intersection hits the crosswalk on the other side. You drive straight into the intersection, meet the gap, and turn in behind that vehicle. That way, Any pedestrians or vulnerable road users on the cross street are in front of you as opposed to your side when you're sitting in the intersection. It puts you in a better defensive posturing situation. And as I said, shoulder checking, the most critical driving habit that you can create and put in place when you're learning how to drive and keeping yourself safe after you get your license. Not shoulder checking is to driving. What not checking to see if a weapon is loaded is to gun safety. Why on any planet would you move a 3,000-pound vehicle at speed and not check to see whether there's a vulnerable road user in your blind areas around your vehicle? Okay, and Corey's put up the video on left-hand turns. Thank you for that, Corey. As well, Corey, there's also this more detailed course over at the Smart Drive Test website, the defensive driving course. It goes over all of this. I have videos explaining every one of these in more detail, and you can look at that course and pick that up as well. Communication. 5 ways that we communicate with other traffic. The position of the vehicle on the roadway and its speed relative to an intersection is going to indicate intent on the part of the driver. Lights and signals, eye contact, hand gestures, and the horn. And remember, signals, turn signals are to tell other drivers, other traffic that you wish to move over, not that you are going to move over. The last one, eye contact and hand gestures work in combination. Oftentimes, if there's a pedestrian at the intersection, for example, and you're not sure what the pedestrian is going, you can wave them across if you're going to stop and wait for them, okay? And then the horn, use the horn sparingly as a form of communication, because in this day and age, in most places, the horn is seen as a sign of aggression. Proactive and predictable. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, drivers are emotional, they're retaliatory, and they're reactionary. The tailgating example that I gave you. We want to move from being retaliatory and reactionary when we're driving to moving to being predictable and being proactive on the roadways. We want to create space around our vehicles. We want to read traffic patterns and understand the actions of individual road users so that we can respond accordingly and keep ourselves safe when we're driving. Risk management is essentially what defensive driving is. It reduces the risk of us being involved in a traffic crash when we're driving. So it's not only preventing and avoiding problems, but it's also reducing the severity and the frequency in which we have traffic crashes. Proactive drivers manage the risks associated with driving, all the problems of social driving. The number one crash in North America is rear end crashes. And if you put in place space in front, you put in place stopping back, the habit, you put in that habit of always having a 2 to 3 second following distance, and you put in place the habit of always stopping back 1 vehicle length from the car in front of you when you're stopped in traffic, those are going to protect you. Those driving habits are going to protect you from being rear-ended by other traffic pattern. Of course, it's always about being vigilant. As one smart driver said here before, it's not about hit and quit it. You come up to the traffic light and you stop and you sit there and you're not doing anything. No, you are doing something. You're watching your center mirror, watching the traffic come up behind you. And then if they're coming up too fast, you can drive out and around the vehicle in front of you and you can prevent being rear-ended. Safer, smarter drivers. We want to help you and facilitate you making the transition from being reactionary, retaliatory to becoming proactive and predictable drivers. We want to expand your scope to become safer, smarter drivers and significantly reduce your chances of being involved in a crash. So we talked about the problems of driving, social driving, people speeding, following too close, risky maneuvers, driving distracted, driving inebriated, driving drunk, driving without a license, driving without insurance, because if you don't have a license and you're driving without insurance. All right, so this is the problem that you're coping with and dealing with every time you go out on the roadways. You're dealing with social driving. The tools that you can put in your toolbox: space management, creating that habit of always having a 2 to 3 second following distance, stopping back in traffic 1 vehicle length when you're stopped in a queue of traffic, speed management. Speed is always second to space management and having that minimum safe distance between your vehicle and other road users on the roadway. Communication and observation and intersections. Identifying and locating intersections, mapping intersections and tracking road users at the intersection. Do this Put these skills in place and you will definitely move from being reactionary and retaliatory when you're driving to being proactive and predictable and significantly reducing your chances of being involved in a crash. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Some interesting statistics about the United States of America, and I have heard this before. I had a smart driver here on the channel leave a comment about Australia versus the United States. The United States has a traffic death rate of 12.5 people per 100,000 inhabitants, whereas other countries, which I looked up, Germany, Australia, Canada is 5 traffic deaths per 100,000 inhabitants, and Australia is 4.5, and then Germany is 3.3 people. And I've heard the statistic before that the United States of America has a very high traffic death rate. And it was interesting because I looked it up and why the United States has a much higher traffic fatality rate than other countries in the world. And number one, which I disagree with, is speeding. All the roads they claim in the United States of America are designed for speed. And again, I go back to the fact that it's the mismanagement of speed and space. But it does beg the question of what is it about the United States of America that causes its traffic death to be astronomically higher than other countries in the world? I mean, we're talking about a traffic death rate in the United States of America that is 300% higher than Australia and 400% higher than what it is in Germany when you take the number of traffic deaths per 100,000 inhabitants. That's just a mind-boggling, incredible number. And one of the hypotheses was the United States of America is so reliant on the motor car that it does not have alternative forms of transportation. And I would argue that there is some validity to that in the fact that everybody, absolutely everybody in the United States of America drives. Now, the same could be said for Australia, because they do have a car culture and everybody drives in Australia because, again, it is low density population. It's not like Europe where you have alternative forms of transportation. You have trains and buses and those types of things. So there are other ways of transportation. As well, the other theory put forth is that roads are not designed for different modes of transportation in the United States. And if you look at Twitter right now, look at the feeds that are coming across there, it's the "we hate cars" movement in terms of engineering design in cities and those types of things. So, just interesting statistics to look at. It's about risk perception. How do we perceive risk to ourselves? How do we manage risk? Because most of us have an optimism bias that when we get into a car, we don't think or don't believe that we're going to get into a car crash, because cars empower us, move us, allow us to get from point A to point B and do our tasks, run around and those types of things. In addition, as cars become more technologically advanced with backup cameras, proximity sensors, blind spot detectors, lane assist, adaptive cruise control, we become more and more relaxed in the vehicle. And of course, we have the reduction of road noise in the vehicle. So they become our second most personal space next to our house. We feel comfortable when we get in our car, and we are not thinking about that when we're driving. And the other interesting statistic about the United States of America, somebody posted this morning because I was talking about risk perception and talking about people are more afraid of driving in snow and ice, or rather driving on snow and ice, than they are of driving in tornadoes, hurricanes, or driving in forest fires, because there was a post on LinkedIn of a truck driver driving through forest fires in Texas. And I said, people are more afraid of driving on snow and ice than they are driving in hurricanes and tornadoes and forest fires, hurricanes, and tornadoes. And somebody said to me, well, there are people who drive in snow all the time and it's perilous and, it's dangerous and you're going to die and crash into the ditch and those types of things. If you're driving in Florida or you live in Florida, you're more likely to drive in a hurricane or be confronted by a hurricane as opposed to driving in snow and ice. Same thing with living in North Texas or living in Oklahoma. There's more chance of you being driving in a tornado or high winds because you're in Tornado Alley as opposed to driving on snow and ice. If you live here where I live in the interior of British Columbia, it's more likely that you're going to be driving in the smokes of forest fires or forest fires on roads in the summertime than you are in snow and ice, especially if you're down in the valleys here in the mountains, because we don't get very much snow here. Minimal snow in the wintertime. So it depends on where you live as to the driving conditions that you might encounter. It was, again, the comment on LinkedIn about risk perception and people talking about ice and snow and people thinking that driving on ice and snow is perilous. Again, looking at the United States of America, if you look at the states in the US that have the highest crash rates in the United States, Mississippi, North Carolina, New Mexico, those are the states that have the highest number of crash rates. The states in the U.S. that have the lowest crash rates, Wisconsin, Vermont, and I want to say Minnesota, but it's not Minnesota. But anyway, it's what I talked about before about people getting upset and excited about driving on snow and ice in the wintertime and the misperception that they're going to die in the wintertime on snow and ice, when the reality is you're going to die on clear roads in the summertime in good weather. That's when most of the traffic crashes happen. It's not in perilous conditions. It's not in inclement weather. It's not when roads are, when visibility is bad. Many fatal traffic crashes do happen at night though, but in the summertime, not in the wintertime, all right? So the 3 states in the US, New Mexico, North Carolina, Mississippi, have the highest crash rates in that country. The states with the winter have the lowest crash rates. So it's exactly what I've been saying about the realities of traffic crashes there. Striker the dog. He's like, what are you doing? You woke me up. I was having such a good nap. He had his 2 walks today already. So we go to the dog park and walk through the woods and the bush. He fancies himself a woodsman. He actually walked through the creek over onto the other side to see some people today. And they're like, what are you doing, you crazy dog? So yeah, there we go. Thank you everybody for participating in the live stream. Always a pleasure. And be safe. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great night. All the best. Bye.